Hey guys, it's Aaron, and today I want to talk about the process of drawing bent plywood. I know that sounds very specific, but the general idea is to how to best go about the process of taking a sheet of something and draw it so it wraps around or is bent on another shape. And that's what we're gonna take a look at. Let's hop in. Okay, so I have just here a quick mock-up. Maybe I'm working on a skate ramp, something like that, and I don't need. Please don't spend time in the comments telling me about my ramp design skills. This is a quick example of the kind of thing that we could use this on. This is not necessarily the ideal design for ramp. That's not what I want to talk about. Though I am talking about it, I apologize. Let's hop in and talk about. Maybe get to the point where I want to see what this looks like with my sheathing on here. And again, this is a ramp because it's a nice, tight little image that fits on the screen. This could be something like a barrel volume ceiling. This could be something like a rounded, window box, something like that. Anytime you have a surface that's not straight that you want to drop sheathing onto, that's what we're talking about. So there's a couple things I've seen that I just want to mention. One is to come in and draw the shape. So draw your shape of your plywood, give it its thickness, grab all of that, make it a group, and then use something like the True Bend extension from TomTom or Fredo's scale and use the bending tool. That is good if you're bending to an exact amount. If I know that I'm going to bend exactly, True Bend is great. It bends towards a full circle. So True Bend will take one end and wrap it all the way around so it meets the other end if I do 360 degrees. So if I'm doing a half a circle with this, that's great. That works. Fredo scale is nice because you can actually grab different segments along there and say I only bend this half of it. But with both those, you are maybe not necessarily going to have an easy time bending to exact geometry. Fredo scale, I know you could get a little bit more because you can do a little bit of snapping perhaps, but if I want to come in and match this exact arc, this arc, by the way, is kind of odd because it's not actually a perfect arc. If I grab my arc tool and I go from the top down to the bottom and I bring my arc down, there's no spot where this will actually meet correctly. See that? So this arc is actually deformed. This is not a perfect arc from one point to the other. So it makes it difficult to take existing material like this and then bend it to match. What you have to do is think about it in a different direction. Specifically, what I want to do is I want to think about the end of my piece of plywood and then use push-pull to cover the space. So what that means is I want to figure out, grab this arc right here and draw the profile of the end of my plywood and then push it across the ramp here. So we are going to dismiss ideas like material sizes and that kind of thing. I just want to get one big piece of material to cover this whole thing and I want to see what that looks like. That's what we're going to do. So to do that, we need to grab this arc. Like I said, I can't just simply draw it. I could potentially come in with something like a Bezier tool and grab the two and then try to, my best I can, line it up. But regardless of how I do that, I'm probably not going to get the exact same increments in the exact same spot to get the perfect arc. Fortunately, what I can do is I can actually come into this geometry, so burrow in here, and I could grab this line right here. I can take that line, I can say Command C to copy it, and I'm going to come all the way back out and say Edit, Paste in Place. That's going to drop that arc right on top where it is already. Now, I'm not done because that arc goes to here, and then I want this plywood to go all the way up to the top here, so I'm going to add another line from this point up to here. And you can see, did you see that how it snapped off there? It's not quite vertical, so I'm going to have it go all the way to there. Now what I'm going to do is grab that line I just drew and the arc I just copied, right-click, and weld them together. That gives me one line that goes from the top of this plywood all the way down to the ground over here. Now, to get the thickness of the plywood, all I have to do is use my offset tool. I grab offset, I click on this line, and I'm going to pull it in this direction. Now, the thickness that I pull it in is the thickness of my material. So I said we weren't going to get too held up or too hung up on material, but I'm going to say something like, I'm going to bring in a 1/2 inch. I know 1/2 inch plywood doesn't bend that well, but it's visual, so I can see it easy. Now, I can take this end and connect them together. And then this end to this end, and that gives me a surface. From here on, it's pretty simple because all I have to do is push, pull, grab that surface, and I can pull that all the way across. If I wanted to do this in smaller pieces, I could pull to the center of this thing right here and then have 2 of them, but you can see that I pull that all the way across like that, and then make that a group. And now I've got my bent plywood. So it's a different way to think about it. Think about the profile that's being stretched across rather than this flat piece that's being pulled across here. Now, when it comes to, like I said, we were ignoring material usage or anything like that. When you do start thinking about that, obviously sooner or later you're going to have to think about if this is going to get built and is not just a pretty picture. You will have to think about material size that you can get a hold of. What you're going to want to keep an eye on is this arc here. This is the outside arc. This is the bigger of the 2 arcs. If you look at entity info, it'll tell you how big that is. So if I wanted to build this as one continuous piece, I would have to find a piece of material that is like 12 foot 10, almost 13 feet long in order to cover this whole arc. If you look at the inside arc, it's going to be just slightly smaller, so not by a whole lot, but a little bit smaller than the outside arc. So if you are keeping an eye on material, that outside arc is what you would want to keep an eye on. And if you had to limit it, if I had to break this at a certain length because I could only get 8-foot material, you'd want to, as you're putting in that length, cut it so that it is less than that 8 foot when you're doing the first arc. We'll back up a little bit. So that would mean something like, so if I look at this, as I come up here, if I look at it, well, if I was to break it like right here, I'm gonna experiment a little bit. So let's say we do that. What length is that arc right there? Oops, I broke it too much. It broke all my lines. Fortunately, easy enough to get together because I can just triple click, disconnect that. There we go. And then when I select those lines, I can re-weld them. Sometimes when you break an arc, it does break, and I can see that 7'2", so that gives me an under 8-foot piece. This piece up here is 5'8", so then in theory, what I could do then is take one piece across like this. There we go. And then that could be one piece right there. Make that into a group. And then my other piece, which is less than 8 feet. Granted, I know now I'm pulling it across here 12 feet anyhow, but then that could be my second piece. And both those would then be under my material length that I have there. But yeah, so there you go. It's not a difficult process. You do have to think about it differently. Like I said, we're thinking about the end profile pulled across rather than taking a flat sheet and bending like you would in the real world. Just one of the cases where the quickest and easiest way to design is not the way you build in the real world. There's a little bit of a different way to think about it. But that will get you that bent plywood around your shape by using a welded edge rather than trying to bend the shape to the geometry you're meeting. So again, probably not a whole lot of people going, well, I mean, maybe you are building ramps. And if so, it's probably a little sturdier than the thing I whipped up real quick to show that arc on. But if you do have to create that geometry wrapping around, it is very much easier to create the end profile, push-pull it, rather than try to take something and wrap it around something else inside of SketchUp. It is possible to do, absolutely. And you guys want to tell me about stories where you've done that? Let's hear it. But by creating that profile in the end and push-pulling, it's going to be a much quicker process and likely more accurate to match the geometry you're wrapping around. If you like that video, go ahead and click like down below. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe. We create several videos each and every week, and you'll be notified of all of them if you subscribe. Most importantly, though, please leave us a comment. Have you ever had to model something like this, and how did you go about it? We like making these videos a lot, but we like them even more when they're showing something you want to see. Thank you.